everyone. Welcome back to the Association Pod. Coming at you again with another episode covering week 10. In today's episode, we're going to break down the power rankings for week 10. We're also going to cover the weekly most impressive player performance. This episode, we're also going to cover the player transaction trends for those that are constantly being added and dropped on the waiver wires and take a look at some of their stats that make them so key for teams to pick up on a week to week basis. Everybody strap in and let's have a great episode. This week's episode is sponsored by Jalen Brunson Burners. Jalen Brunson Burners have been a hot item in the league for many seasons now. Brunson Burners now have a special edition coming out this year. The NBA Cup burner will be available at your nearest stores. Please grab them before they run out. Warning, Jalen's Brunson Burners may cause flopping, flailing, and foul baiting. Please be 18 plus or older to purchase Jalen Brunson Burners. Week 10 was definitely an incredible week to watch, not only for the NBA, but also for the association. The Christmas Day games brought us some incredible performances that definitely showed up in the weekly matchups, and we're going to cover some of those as well as the power rankings starting right now. In the 12th spot this week, we are going to find Captain's Carnival. Taylor's squad unfortunately takes a drop this week after having 3 straight weeks rising up 1 spot in the power rankings. The team finished either 11th or 12th in 7 of the 9 statistical categories this week. And second best in turnover margin this week was not enough to correct those 2 and unfortunately finds them in the 12th spot. One bright spot for Captain's Carnival this week was Jamal Murray. Jamal had an incredible performance this week, putting up 117 points. That included 20 3-pointers and also providing 32 assists for the squad. It was a great performance from Jamal Murray, and we will definitely be seeing some more Denver Nuggets in the Impressive Player of the Week nominees. Coming up next is going to be Benny's Bistro in the 11th spot. Benny's squad is another team taking a drop as they fall 2 spots from 9th to 11th this week. There was a lot of stat categories this week for Benny's Bistro that fell in the bottom 4th rank, with 3 finishes in 12th, 2 finishes in the 11th spot, and a 10th ranked spot in another category. The Bistro had the best turnover margin this week and was also best in free throw percentage, but those 2 stat categories unfortunately were not able to correct the poor performances in the others. The most impressive player nominee from Benny's Bistro is going to be James Harden. Harden has been playing very well for the Clippers, having an MVP renaissance season for the squad. This week, Harden provided 91 points, 10 rebounds, and 19 assists. Harden was also able to give Benny a 94.4% free throw percentage and also was able to provide that percentage on a lot of free throws, making 34 out of 36 attempts this week. Coming in the 10th spot, our first riser of the week, a big lump with Knobs. Chris is able to move up 2 spots this week after having a performance in the 12th spot last week. This is their best performance in the power rankings since week 6 when they finished 8th. 2 big keys for the jump for Knobs is a 2nd place performance in steals and a 4th finish in turnovers this week. The player that helped carry a big lump of Knobs to a good performance this week, moving them up, is Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen has cooled off a bit from his hot start to the year, but still gave Chris 86 points, 17 rebounds, 11 3-pointers, and was also able to get all those numbers on 53.7% from the field. Some highly efficient scoring and some good performances for a big lump of Knobs this week. Landing in the 8th spot this week, we find Harry the Hawk. We find Kenny's squad moving back up in the power rankings this week after they had dropped to 10th last week. Some of the key performances for Kenny's team this week was being top in steals, being tied for 4th in rebounds, and a 5th place finish in assists. Harry the Hawk also only had 1 performance in the bottom 4th of any statistical category this week. So we definitely see the team bouncing back after their drop last week. One of the key contributors to the rise for Harry the Hawk and their most impressive player of the week nominee is Emmanuel Quickley. Quickley contributing 70 points with 10 3-pointers, 13 rebounds, and 19 assists. Providing double-digit outputs in 4 statistical categories like Quickley did this week is definitely worthy of being the nominee for Harry the Hawk and a big key for them moving up again. In the 7th spot, we find our 2nd biggest riser in the power rankings this week, the underdogs. We see the squad for Ryan having an incredible bounce back performance this week after they went from 3rd to 11th from week 8 to week 9. Some of the key performances that brought this move back up the power rankings is a first place finish in field goal percentage and a third place finish in 3-pointers made. Ryan's squad is hoping to continue this improvement by building on some better performances potentially in steals, which were 11th, and free throw percentages, which were 10th. Some better performances in those categories could see Ryan's team continuing the trend back up to the top of the power rankings again. The player that continues to impress for the underdogs and being the back-to-back impressive player of the week nominee is Cooper Flack. Cooper continues to fill the stat sheet in multiple categories after nearly having a 33-point triple-double this week. In total, I put up 99 points, 27 rebounds, and 25 assists. With that 27 rebound total, being the second highest of any most impressive player of the week nominee. Cooper is a very important player, not only for the Dallas Mavericks, but a very important player for the underdogs as they hope to continue their rise up the power rankings. Coming in number 6 and moving up 2 spots this week is aspirations of a title. Tim was able to return to the 6th spot in the power rankings where they were back in week 8 2 weeks ago. The rise back up to the 6th spot and the top half of the power rankings is contributed mostly to being first in points this week, second place finishes and rebounds and assists, and also being third in steals. Tim definitely wants to see those performances continue, along with some improvements in turnovers, which were 11th, and free throw percentage, which were also 11th. Another player receiving a second most impressive player of the week nominee is Cade Cunningham. Cade filled the stat sheet again in multiple categories, providing 93 points with 9 3-pointers, 23 rebounds, 49 assists, and also 8 steals. Cade Cunningham continues to be one of the most impressive players in the league this year, and Aspirations hopes that Cade can launch them out of the 6th spot and continue to climb up the power rankings. In the 5th spot this week, taking a 1-spot drop is going to be the Heatles. We finally see John Frank's team only moving within 1 spot of their previous rank after they've been our most inconsistent finisher for the rest of the season. It was still a really strong performance for the Heatles despite the 1-spot drop. The team finished 3rd in field goal percentage and turnovers, finishing 4th in 3-pointers made and points, and also tied for 4th in rebounds. John Frank has made it clear he wants to highlight the deficiency in assists as the team finished 10th again, and he's looking to add some help in that stat category. One player that gave him a solid performance, though, in assists, as well as filling multiple stats, is Anthony Black. Anthony was able to put up 103 points, with 17 of those being 3-pointers, the second most out of any nominee this week. Anthony also gave the Heatles 22 rebounds and 18 assists. Anthony Black is finding his footing on the Orlando Magic and put on a strong performance not only for them, but also for John Frank and the Heatles in the 5th spot this week. In the 4th spot of the power rankings, we find the Infirmary. Ryan W's squad continues to be one of the most consistent finishers in the power rankings this week, as they find only a 1-spot drop from their 3rd place finish last week. The Infirmary put up some good performances in blocks where they were tied for 2nd, and rebounds where they finished 3rd this week. We saw the Infirmary not have any statistical category finish worse than an 8th rank, being one of the highest floor finishers in the stat categories this week. If that floor can continue, along with some of the highs being even higher, we could see Ryan W's squad moving up in the power rankings again. A player that helped them be so consistent across all the stat categories is Trey Murphy III. We saw Murphy put up double digits in 5 stat categories this week, finishing with 68 points, 10 of those being threes, 17 rebounds, 13 assists, and also finishing with 10 steals, the most of any most impressive player nominee this week. The all-around strong performance out of Trey Murphy brought an all-around great performance for the Infirmary this week in the 4th spot. Taking a step back in the power rankings this week, we find the Jimmy Chitwoods in the 3rd spot. After jumping all the way to number 1 last week, we find the Chitwoods dropping to 3rd this week. Despite the drop, the Chitwoods are still performing great, as this is their 6th straight week in the top 3rd of the power rankings. Some of the key stat categories keeping the Chitwoods in the top 3 is a 1st place finish in 3-pointers and a 1st place finish in blocks this week. The team also finished 3rd in assists and 3rd in free throw percentage. Some of the drop is contributed to some not so strong performances in field goal percentage and turnovers. where the team finished 10th in both of those stat categories. We find another back-to-back nominee in the most impressive player of the week for the Jimmy Chitwoods, with it being Keontae George again. Keontae filled the stat sheet again with 103 points this week, 14 of those being threes, 22 rebounds, and 25 assists. George continues to be a key contributor for the Utah Jazz, rising up to be a great contributor for the Jimmy Chitwoods as well. Finishing in the second spot of the power rankings, we find Wiggins of Nas. Wiggins remains second for another week as they placed in that spot in week 9. Nate's squad has also been one of the most consistent finishers this season, with only 1 week being outside the top 5. We saw an incredible all-around performance out of Wiggins of Nas this week, despite not having any statistical category being first. The team finished with 2 second place finishes in free throw percentage and threes, a third place finish in points, and 4 finishes in the 4th rank with field goal percentage, assists, and steals being those 4th place spots in the stat categories. Turnovers are slightly holding back Nate's team this week, as they did finish with the most turnovers in the league this week. We did see turnovers holding back Wiggins of Nas from moving up out of second, as the team finished 12th in turnovers this week. The best performance coming off of Wiggins of Nas is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Nate got a great performance out of SGA this week, contributing 113 points, 21 rebounds, and 25 assists. The defending MVP of the NBA continues to be a strong performer for Wiggins of Nas, keeping them in the second spot this week. Coming back to the top spot, we find Malik's Monastery. Malik's squad was first back in week 8, and after a slight break from the top, we see them returning to form again this week. Thomas's squad put up great performances in rebounds and assists, those being first rank in the league this week. Thomas was also second in points, second in field goal percentage, and tied second in blocks. Malik's Monastery had a couple of players that were worthy of most impressive nominee this week, with Kawhi Leonard unfortunately being left out despite his 42-point performance at the end of the week. The nominee for Malik's Monastery is Nikola Jokic. Jokic filled so many stat categories this week, providing 133 points, with 10 of those being threes, 54 rebounds, 57 assists, and 54 rebounds. Jokic also had 5 blocks and 7 steals this week. Jokic is coming after that MVP award again and is definitely a key contributor to Malik's Monastery. Now that we've finished the power rankings and looked at each team's most impressive player of the week nominee, it's time to hand out our awards. The bronze medal for most impressive player of the week is going to go to Cade Cunningham for aspirations of the title. His 49 assists were second most in the league of the nominees this week, and his 8 steals were the second most of any player nominee as well. The 23 rebounds and the ways that Cade filled the stat sheet are deserving of a bronze medal. Our silver medal for week 10 is going to go to Jamal Murray from Captain's Carnival. The 23 pointers made by Jamal Murray were the most this week of any player nominated for the award, and his 117 points were second as well of any nominee. Coming in first and winning gold for week 10 most impressive player of the week, to no one's surprise, is Nikola Jokic. A 55-point triple-double on Christmas Day not only got everyone's attention, but it also reflected in the stats this week, as Nikola Jokic led the nominees in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. It is sad to see that Nikola Jokic's gold medal finish for week 10's most impressive player of the week is being followed up by a knee injury. We just learned that Nikola Jokic suffered a hyperextended knee and is going to miss at least a month of the season. It is going to be a big blow for Malik's Monastery, but we'll see how the squad can continue after they not only finish first in the power rankings, but with the winner of the most impressive player of the week for week 10. Now that we've concluded the power rankings analysis, we're going to take a look at some player transaction trends and see which players have been picked up to the most rosters so far this year. Some of the key trends we're looking at is how many times players have been added and dropped, and seeing how often those players get cycled through different rosters. What we're going to be looking at are those players with the most and highlighting some of the stats as to why they are key contributors to teams week to week, but maybe not enough to stay on rosters. We have a number of players that have been added and picked up at least 5 times so far this season, and we're going to highlight a couple of those here first. A key player who has just been added for the 5th time is Jonas Valanciunas. It's obviously a very important thing to note that Jonas is being added after Nikola Jokic's injury. It'll be interesting to see if Valanciunas continues to be frequently added and dropped, or if he's going to stay on a roster for a little longer time. Next up, we're going to take a look at three centers who have been added frequently, as they are backups to centers who have missed some time this season. The first of these centers that are backing up injured players is Jock Landale. Landale has been backing up Zach Edey so far this season, but unfortunately, the young big man has missed a lot of the season so far, paving way for Landale to be added 5 times, but also being dropped 5 times so far. Landale has been putting up some pretty good averages on the season so far, providing 11 points per game on 51% from the field, and also bringing just under 6 rebounds. It is something to note that Landale is now dealing with an injury himself, so this could be part of why Landale continues to be added and dropped frequently and not able to stay on a roster on a permanent basis. Another center that has been frequently added and dropped is going to be Andre Drummond. Drummond is backing up Joel Embiid for the 76ers, and with Embiid frequently missing time as he's dealing with injuries, that's led to Andre Drummond being added 5 times and also dropped 5 times. Drummond is bringing 7.3 points per game and 9.3 rebounds to those that add him, but his inconsistency of being in the starting lineup and not a consistent minutes allocation is part of the reason why we see Drummond potentially being added and dropped so frequently, and also being a player who's currently on the waiver wire. Another center who's backing up an injured starter is Luke Cornett. Cornett has been backing up Victor Wembanyama on the San Antonio Spurs and has been able to still be a contributing player even with Wembanyama coming back, as he is on a minutes restriction right now. Luke Cornett is bringing 8.1 points per game, 6.7 rebounds per game, and also just under a block and a half per game. It'll be interesting to see how long Cornett can stay on a roster as Wembanyama continues to work back from his injuries and then eventually comes off a minutes restriction. Taking a break from centers, we take a look at a wing player in Kevin Huerter. We see Kevin Huerter being added 5 times and also being dropped 5 times so far this season. Huerter for the Chicago Bulls has been playing some inconsistent minutes behind Kobe White, who has missed a lot of games so far this season. Huerter is bringing some pretty good stat averages so far this season with 11.7 points per game, 1.7 threes per game, and 3.5 rebounds a game. It'll be interesting to see how Kevin Huerter performs as the Chicago Bulls backcourt continues to rotate around players as different guys deal with injuries. The next player we take a look at is going to be Aaron Wiggins. Wiggins for the Oklahoma City Thunder has seen some inconsistent playing time as the Thunder are just so loaded with players contributing in multiple different facets. We've seen Wiggins' performances drop as Jalen Williams has come back for the Thunder, but at the beginning of the season, Wiggins was definitely a strong waiver wire pickup, being added 5 times and also dropped 5 times. For the season, Wiggins is averaging 10.8 points per game, 2 3-pointers a game, and just under 3 rebounds. We have seen those averages coming down in the last week, as we've only seen Wiggins put up 6.3 points per game and 1 3 per game in the last week. It'll be interesting to see if Wiggins can cut some minutes out for him in the Thunder's roster and find himself on the waiver wire being picked up by rosters again in the association. In a similar boat to Aaron Wiggins, we find his Oklahoma City Thunder teammate, Alex Caruso. Caruso has been picked up and dropped 5 times as well, similar to his Thunder teammate. Caruso has missed more games than Wiggins, which is probably part of why. Caruso has missed more games due to injuries and management this year than Aaron Wiggins, which might be part of the contributing factor to him being rostered so inconsistently. For the season, Caruso is averaging 6.4 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, and 1.6 steals per game. Caruso has been trending better in the last couple of weeks as he has played more games consistently and had less injury concerns. His averages are up over the last week to 9.3 points and 1.3 3-pointers made. Caruso historically has always been a player that is frequently added and dropped on the waiver wire, so it'll be interesting to see how that trend continues for the rest of the season. As we take a look at a couple of those players that have been rostered 5 times, we're going to take a look now at 3 players who have been added and dropped the most so far this season. Taking a look at a player that's been added 6 times and only dropped 5, as he currently is on the Captain's Carnival squad right now. That player being Julian Champagny. Champagny has been a strong contributor so far this season and has been playing very well for the San Antonio Spurs. On the season, Champagny is averaging 9.8 points per game, 2 3-pointers a game, and 5.6 rebounds for the squad. Champagny has also gotten a couple of starts filling in for different injured players in the San Antonio Spurs backcourt. We'll see if Champagny can carve out a permanent spot on Captain's Carnival's roster or if we find him on the waiver wire again. Our next interesting player trend, and being added 7 times, but currently being on a roster and only dropped 6 times, is Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis has been able to feast on his role with the Milwaukee Bucks as he's been able to take advantage of some missed time by Giannis Antetokounmpo and been able to perform very well in multiple stat categories. Bobby Portis for the season is averaging 13.1 points per game, just under 6.5 rebounds, and just under 2 3-pointers a game. It's interesting to note that Portis, for the last week, has been averaging 17.8 points per game and 8.5 rebounds, and also providing 2 threes a game. Part of this is probably why we see Bobby Portis staying on the roster so far, currently being held by the Jimmy Chitwoods. If Portis can continue to perform like this, even as Giannis is coming off his minutes restriction, it'll be interesting to see if Portis can carve out a permanent role for himself on a squad. Finally, we highlight the player with the most transaction changes in the league so far. That player being Lu Dort. Lu Dort has been added and dropped 7 times in the association so far by different rosters. Dort has been averaging 8 points per game, 1.8 3-pointers per game, and 3.5 rebounds. Dort, similar to the other 2 Oklahoma City Thunder we've highlighted, has been dealing with some inconsistent rotation minutes as well as missing a couple of games due to some injuries. Dort's averages are slightly down from last year as he's averaging 2 less points per game, about half a 3 less per game, and almost half a steal a game worse as well. If Dort can find some more consistent performances and be a little bit more of a contributor, it'll be interesting to see if he continues to be the most inconsistent rostered player or if he can carve out a permanent spot. When the season concludes, we will take another look at the player transaction trends to see which players at the season's end will be added and dropped the most. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this week's Association Pod. I hope everyone enjoyed the Power Rankings breakdown and also enjoyed those player transaction trends analysis as well. It continues to be another great season for our league so far. There's some highly contested matchups as always, and we still have so much of the season to shake out and for players to make claims in the standings and the Power Rankings. Thanks again to everyone for listening. Good luck in the